The silence of a winter night in a suburban cul-de-sac is rarely peaceful. It is heavy. It is a vacuum waiting to be filled. On the night of January 14th, that vacuum was shattered by a 911 call that sounded like a textbook tragedy. A husband, breathless and sobbing, screaming into the receiver that he had just found his wife in a pool of blood at the bottom of the basement stairs. "She tripped," he wailed, his voice cracking with a rhythmic desperation. "I think she's gone. Please God, she's not breathing." When the first responders arrived at the sprawling colonial estate, they saw exactly what he described: a broken body, a steep set of wooden stairs, and a grieving man clutching his head in his hands. But as the lead detective stepped into the dim, flickering light of that basement, a cold realization settled in his chest. Something was fundamentally wrong. The physics of the fall didn't align with the spray of the blood. The husband's shirt was damp, but not in the places where a man holding his dying wife would be soaked. The glass on the floor wasn't shattered. It was placed. In that moment, the air shifted from grief to suspicion. This wasn't a tragic accident. It was a calculated stage play where the lead actor had forgotten one crucial detail. Dead bodies tell stories that the living try to bury. Welcome to Midnight Crime Vault, where tonight we deconstruct a crime scene that refused to match the story. To understand the carnage of that night, we must first look at the portraits on the mantelpiece, the carefully curated images of a life built on prestige. Meet Thomas and Elena Vance. To their neighbors in the affluent suburbs of Connecticut, they were the golden pair. Thomas was a high-stakes corporate consultant, a man who built his career on optimizing outcomes and managing crises. He was charismatic, sharp-suited, and possessed a calculated calm that commanded every room. Elena was a beloved local pediatrician, a woman whose soft voice and genuine empathy made her a pillar of the community. They lived in a house that was a fortress of crown molding, marble countertops, and manicured lawns, a physical manifestation of the American dream. However, behind the heavy mahogany doors, the optimization was failing. By late 2024, the Vances were drowning in a silent sea of debt. Thomas had gambled on a series of aggressive tech investments that evaporated overnight, leaving them with a lifestyle they could no longer afford. The tension in the house was a living thing, moving through the hallways like a ghost. Friends later recalled that Elena had become quiet, her once bright eyes shadowed by a growing realization that her husband's success was a house of cards held together by lies and high-interest loans. Thomas, a man who hated losing more than he loved anything else, saw his world crumbling. He needed a way out, and in his mind, the exit strategy required a sacrifice. The night of January 14th was freezing, the kind of cold that turns the ground into iron. Inside the Vance residence, the atmosphere was even colder. According to Thomas's initial statement, they had enjoyed a quiet dinner with a bottle of expensive Cabernet. He claimed he went to the upstairs study to finish some reports while Elena went to the basement to check on the laundry. He told police he heard a loud thud, followed by a sickening series of crashes. He ran to the basement door, peered into the darkness, and saw his wife crumpled at the base of the 15 wooden steps. This was the narrative he presented to the officers: a tragic slip, a fatal tumble, a husband's worst nightmare. But as the forensic team began their work under the harsh glow of portable halogen lights, the accident began to dissolve. Forensic physics is an unforgiving critic. If Elena had fallen from the top step, her momentum would have carried her body outward, away from the base of the stairs. Instead, she was found tucked almost beneath the bottom riser, as if she had been placed there. Furthermore, the blood spatter on the wall was cast off, a distinct pattern created when a blunt object is swung in an arc. Gravity doesn't swing objects in arcs. People do. The deeper the investigators dug, the more they found the psychological profile of Thomas Vance to be that of a master manipulator. He wasn't just a husband in debt. He was a narcissist who viewed his wife as an asset to be liquidated. As the sun rose over the snow-covered lawn, revealing the cracks in Thomas's composure, the digital forensic team began their sweep. They discovered that Thomas had spent the 3 weeks prior to the accident researching things no grieving husband should know. His browser history revealed a dark obsession with forensic science. He searched for terminal velocity of a human fall, how to clean blood from grout, and post-mortem bruising patterns. He was trying to build a perfect crime, but he was researching it like a business proposal, missing the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human struggle. Even more chilling was the discovery of a burner phone hidden in his gym bag. On it were messages to a woman in another state. a woman he had promised a new life to, a life funded by a windfall he expected to receive by the end of the winter. The forensic investigation centered on the kitchen, the true site of the struggle. While the basement was the stage, the kitchen was the reality. Using luminol, the investigators turned off the lights and sprayed the surfaces. The room erupted in a ghostly blue glow. There, on the pristine tile and the edge of the island, were the invisible remnants of a violent confrontation. The blue light revealed footprints, Thomas's expensive Italian leather shoes pacing in a frantic circle, and a set of smaller, smeared prints that suggested Elena was fighting for her life. They found a microscopic droplet of Elena's blood on the underside of a kitchen cabinet, a spot Thomas had overlooked in his frantic cleaning. This tiny sphere of DNA proved that Elena had bled in the kitchen long before she ever fell down the stairs. The narrative of the accident was being methodically dismantled by the very science Thomas thought he could master. As the trial commenced, the courtroom became a theater of the macabre. The prosecution brought in a world-renowned blood spatter analyst who used strings and lasers to recreate the movement of the blood. He showed how the mist on Thomas's shirt could only have been caused by impact spatter, the result of a blunt force blow to a bleeding source. He demonstrated that for Thomas to have that pattern on his chest, he had to be standing over Elena as she was being struck. The defense tried to argue that Thomas had been holding her during a final, gasping breath, but the science was cold and unyielding. The sheer volume of evidence began to weigh down the room. Elena's family sat in the front row, their faces etched with a grief that had turned into a demand for justice. They heard how Elena had been sedated. Toxicology reports found high levels of a common sleep aid in her system, meaning she was likely unconscious or heavily drugged when Thomas dragged her body to the basement to stage the scene. The final blow to Thomas's defense was the testimony of Elena's own smartwatch. While Thomas claimed to be in his study during the time of the fall, the digital logs showed his heart rate spiking to 140 beats per minute at the exact moment he claimed to be calmly reading reports. Meanwhile, Elena's watch recorded a sudden, violent movement followed by a total cessation of heart activity 10 minutes before. Thomas even called 911. The time gap was the final nail in the coffin. He hadn't called for help. He had spent those 10 minutes rearranging the furniture, placing the broken glass, and positioning his wife's body to look like a victim of gravity. The jury didn't even need the full day. They saw the calculation. They saw the greed. They saw a man who thought he was smarter than the laws of motion and the biology of death. When the verdict of guilty was read, Thomas Vance didn't flinch. He remained a consultant, the optimizer, looking as though he were simply analyzing a failed business deal. But as he was led away in chains, the mask finally slipped, revealing a hollow, desperate man who had traded the woman he loved for the hope of a clean ledger. To this day, the Vance house remains a dark landmark in the town, a beautiful facade that hid a rotten core. It serves as a haunting reminder that while people can weave intricate webs of lies, the physical world doesn't participate in the deception. The blood, the bone, and the digital footprints stay behind to tell the truth. But what do you think? Was Thomas Vance truly a lone predator, or did the pressures of his failing financial empire snap something in a man who was once good? Could there be more to the story that the forensics missed? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We read every single one. If you found this case as gripping as we did, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Midnight Crime Vault community. We dive deep into the cases the world wants to forget, uncovering the truth one detail at a time. Click the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay vigilant, because the truth is often hiding in plain sight.